That's me. The homeowner they came for. It happened on a quiet morning, in the perfect suburb. 3 knocks on my door, 2 fake officers in tactical vests, and 1 smiling HOA president who thought she finally had me. They shouted, "You're under arrest." But what they didn't know was that they were seconds away from the biggest mistake of their lives. Welcome back to the HOA Society. I'm Daniel. I live in a quiet neighborhood in Texas, a place where lawns are green, fences are neat, and neighbors act polite. But behind the smiles, there's power, pettiness, and people who think they control everyone. I'm just a homeowner here, working a regular job. Or at least that's what they believe. But today, you'll see how far the HOA will go, and why they should have never come for me. I still remember that morning. The sky was quiet, blue but heavy, the kind of silence that feels staged, like something was waiting to happen. I was sipping my coffee, leaning against the kitchen counter. My dog sat near the back door, ears twitching. That's when I heard it. 3 knocks. Slow, loud, commanding. I froze for a second, not because I was afraid, but because I already knew. Trouble had finally arrived. I walked to the front door, each step heavy. My heart wasn't racing, not even once. I opened the door, and there they stood. 2 men in tactical vests, big sunglasses covering their eyes. The words, "Community Enforcement," stitched across their chests in yellow, their arms crossed, chests puffed, like actors in a cheap movie. And behind them, there she was, the HOA president, clipboard in her hands, lips pressed tight. Her smile was small, but her eyes, her eyes gave it away. She was enjoying this. "Step outside," one of the men said. "You're under arrest." I almost laughed, but I didn't. Instead, I looked at them, then at her. I didn't move. The second officer waved a paper in my face. "You've ignored it. At multiple violation notices, you owe thousands in unpaid fines. The board has authorized your removal from the community." Removal from the community? That was a new one, even for the HOA. And then, the man reached for his handcuffs. I stayed silent, because silence makes people nervous, and nervous people make mistakes. My dog barked once, sharp and loud. The president flinched, just for a second. The officers didn't move. Neighbors began peeking through curtains. One man across the street pulled out his phone. I could see it glowing in his hands. Everyone loves a scandal in the suburbs, and the HOA always knew how to provide one. I finally stepped forward. The taller officer grabbed my arm. His grip was tight, too tight for a neighborhood rule enforcer. I turned my head slowly and smiled. That smile stopped him for a second, because deep down, he knew something wasn't right. Real cops don't need HOA presidents standing behind them with clipboards. Real cops don't shout about mailbox violations or illegal parking. But these men, they weren't real cops. I could see the sweat dripping on his forehead. The president cleared her throat and said, "Go on, take him in." They started pushing me toward their car. It wasn't even a squad car, just a black SUV. No sirens, no cage inside, just tinted windows and empty seats. Each step I took, I was counting in my head. 1, 2, 3, closer to the edge, closer to the line they didn't want me to cross. Because what they didn't know was that I wasn't just a homeowner here. I wasn't just another guy with a mortgage and a lawn to mow. I was something else entirely. But I played along. I let them push me forward. I let the president smirk behind me. I let the neighbors whisper, until the moment came. The shorter officer reached for his cuffs again. His hand shook a little, maybe from nerves, maybe from doubt. And I finally spoke. "You sure you want?" And I couldn't help but grin, because I didn't belong to them. I never did. I stopped walking. The taller officer tried to shove me again, but I planted my feet like concrete. I reached into my pocket slowly, deliberately. Both officers tensed, hands twitching toward their belts. And then, I pulled it out, my badge. The gold letters caught the sunlight. 3 simple letters that froze them in place. FBI. The president's smile collapsed. The taller officer stepped back. The shorter one's face went pale, and the neighbors, their whispers turned into gasps. I held the badge in front of me. Steady. And I said quietly, "Now, let's talk about impersonating law enforcement." The silence that followed was heavier than the knocks on my door. The officers looked at each other, eyes darting, breathing shallow, their fake authority crumbling like cheap paper. The president tried to speak, but no words came out. Her clipboard slipped from her hands, hit the pavement, pages scattering. I leaned in closer and whispered just loud enough for them to hear, "This isn't your game anymore." My dog barked again, louder this time, as if he knew the shift had happened, as if he felt the balance of power tilt. And that's when I noticed something even stranger. The SUV parked on the street. It wasn't just any vehicle. The plates were covered, taped over, no registration, no markings. It wasn't just fake HOA cops. It was something deeper, something darker. And that's the moment I realized. This wasn't just about fines or parking rules or mailbox heights. This was a setup, a trap, something much bigger than the HOA president's ego. The badge hung in the air, glinting in the morning sun. The 3 letters, FBI, burned into their eyes like fire. For a long moment, nobody moved. The 2 fake officers froze, their muscles tight, their voices gone, and the HOA president. She looked like her entire world was slipping through. Her fingers I let the silence stretch, because silence makes cowards reveal themselves, and that morning, cowardice was everywhere. The taller officer swallowed hard. I could see the vein pulsing on his neck. His partner shifted his weight, trying to act tough, but his knees shook, and the president. She bent down quickly, scrambling for her clipboard, like hiding behind a piece of paper would save her. I spoke slowly, letting each word fall heavy. "Do you realize? Impersonating law enforcement is a federal crime." Neither officer answered. Instead, the taller one finally said, We were just following orders." Orders. That word echoed in my head. Orders from who? Sure, the president had power in the HOA, but even she couldn't order men to fake arrests. Something bigger was behind this, and I knew it. I stepped closer, my badge still in my hand, their fake confidence evaporating. The shorter officer stammered, This is all a misunderstanding." I tilted my head. A misunderstanding that involves fake badges, fake uniforms, and an unmarked SUV with covered plates. Their faces turned white. The president finally found her voice, her tone sharp, desperate. "You can't intimidate us. This is HOA property, and you broke our rules." I almost laughed out loud. HOA property. She actually thought the suburban bylaws gave her more authority than federal law. It was the kind of arrogance you only see in the suburbs, where people fight over mailbox colors and grass lengths like it's war. Neighbors were gathering now, curtains pulled back, doors opening, phones out. Every second this dragged on. More witnesses, more proof. And still, the fake cops didn't move. I leaned forward, whispering low enough for just them to hear. "You picked the wrong house, and the wrong man." I straightened, raised my voice, stepped back. "Both of you." The taller officer hesitated, but then took one slow step back. "Hi." His partner followed. The president's lips trembled. Her clipboard clutched tight to her chest. She tried one last time. "We have the right to enforce order in this community." I turned, locking my eyes on her. Order doesn't come from fear, and it doesn't come from fake uniforms. Her smirk was gone, her mask was gone, and for the first time, she looked small. I could have ended it there. I could have walked back inside, closed the door, and let them drown in their own failure. But something in my gut told me not to. Something was wrong, something deeper than HOA fines and power trips. So I asked, "Who sent you?" The officers glanced at each other. Neither spoke. The president shook her head. "This meeting is over." She turned to leave, but I stepped in front of her, not touching her, just blocking her path. Her eyes darted, her breathing quick, because now she wasn't in control, and people like her, they hate losing control. "You think this ends when you walk away?" I said. "No, this ends when I find out why." Her face hardened. "You're just a homeowner. Stay in your lane. Just a homeowner." I smiled. If only she knew. I pulled out my phone, dialed a number. When the line clicked, I said only one word, "Package," and hung up. The officers shifted uneasily. The president's eyes widened. She didn't understand the word, but she knew it meant trouble. Minutes later, a black car rolled into the neighborhood, not an SUV, not a fake, a government-issued sedan. Two real agents stepped out, suits crisp, eyes sharp. The crowd of neighbors gasped. The president tried to back away, but one agent stopped her. "Ma'am, we'll need you to stay right here." The fake officers panicked. They stuttered excuses, tripped over their words, but the agents ignored them, focused on me instead. "Everything okay here?" one asked. I nodded slowly. "Caught some actors trying to play cop. Thought you might want to handle it." The taller officer shouted suddenly, "They made us do it!" The whole crowd erupted. Phones zoomed in. The president froze. Her ficarid. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The whole day replayed in my head. The fake cops, the president smirking, the neighbors whispering. And then that envelope, like a warning from someone I hadn't even seen. I had been in enough investigations to know one thing. Warnings are never just warnings. They're threats, and threats mean fear. Fear means there's something worth hiding. So I asked myself, what was the HOA so desperate to protect? I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up, watching, listening. The neighborhood was still. But around midnight, I saw it. A light flickered on at the HOA office across the street. It wasn't supposed to be open at night, but there she was, the president. Slipping inside with her clipboard tucked under her arm, I watched through the blinds. Her shadow moved around, quick, secretive. Then another figure joined her, a man in a dark coat, tall, broad shoulders, face hidden in the glow of the office lamp. They stood close, whispered, hands moved over papers, and then I saw her hand something to him, a folder, thick, stuffed with documents. He didn't stay long. Within minutes, he was gone. She followed after, locking the office tight, and just like that, the street was silent again. I knew then the fake arrest wasn't about me personally. It was about keeping me distracted, keeping me away from whatever was inside that office, whatever was inside that folder. The next morning, I acted like nothing happened. I mowed my lawn. I waved at neighbors. I even nodded at the president when she drove by in her shiny SUV. Her eyes met mine for half a second, and then darted away. She was nervous, rattled. That gave me an edge. Later that day, I walked the neighborhood, calm, casual, like any other homeowner. But inside, my mind was racing. I needed answers, and I knew exactly where to start. Mr. Johnson, the oldest man on the street. He had lived here longer than anyone. He sat on it, his porch every morning with his paper and coffee, and unlike the others, he didn't care for the HOA's games. I walked up slowly. "Morning," I said. He looked up, his eyes sharp despite his age. "You stirred the pot yesterday," he muttered. I smiled. "Word travels fast," he chuckled. "Word doesn't have to travel. Everyone saw it." I leaned against his fence. "Tell me something, Mr. Johnson. Has the HOA always been like this?" He lowered his paper. "No, not always. It used to be about keeping the place nice. Then she came along. The president." He nodded. "Things changed after she joined. Stricter rules, bigger fines, and secrets. Secrets." He sipped his coffee. "I've seen men come in and out of that office at night. Strangers. Not from this neighborhood. Cars without plates. Meetings that end before sunrise." I felt my chest tighten. So it wasn't just me. I wasn't imagining it. "What do you think they're hiding?" I asked. He shook his head slowly. "All I know is, people who ask too many questions around here don't stay long." The way he said it, cold, final. It sent a chill through me. I left his porch with more questions than answers. But one thing was clear. This wasn't about grass length or parking spaces. This was about power. And power always leaves a trail. That night, I made my move. I waited until the neighborhood slept, streetlights flickering, houses dark. The HOA office sat across the cul-de-sac, small, plain, but guarded with secrets. I slipped across the street. Quiet, careful. The lock on the back door wasn't much of a challenge. Within seconds, I was inside. The office smelled like paper and stale coffee, files stacked neatly, binders labeled with rules and regulations, but I wasn't interested in those. I was looking for something else, something they didn't want anyone to see. I checked drawers, cabinets, desk folders, and then I found it. A locked filing cabinet, the kind people you see when they have something worth hiding. It took me less than a minute. The lock clicked open. Inside, folders, dozens of them, all with names of homeowners on my street. I pulled one out, a neighbor's file. Inside, not just rule violations, but personal information, finances, work history, even medical notes. My stomach turned. This wasn't an HOA. This was surveillance. They were watching everyone, collecting dirt, keeping people in line with fear. I grabbed another folder, this time, my name on it. I opened it and froze. It wasn't just violations, it was my entire life. Photos of me at work, at the store, even inside my backyard, copies of phone records, notes about my visitors, my habits, and at the bottom, a stamped file, classified. My pulse quickened. This wasn't just HOA pettiness, this was organized, and someone bigger than the president was pulling the strings. Suddenly, I heard it. A creak on the floor behind me. I spun around, and there she was, the president, standing in the doorway, her face calm, too calm, her eyes locked on me. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Her smile crept back, but weaker this time. "You think you're clever," she whispered, "but you don't understand what you've stepped into." I held up the folder with my name on it. "I understand enough. This isn't about rules. This is about control." She tilted her head. "You call it control. I call it order." Her voice was steady, but her hands twitched, and then she said something that made the hair on my neck stand. "You don't know who we work for. We, not I, not me. We." That one word told me everything. She wasn't alone. She wasn't the mastermind. She was just a piece of something much bigger. I took a step closer. "Then tell me, who's really behind this?" Her smile widened, almost cruel. "Ask too many questions, and you'll end up like the others." The others, that sent a chill through my chest, because suddenly, I thought about the neighbors who had moved away quietly, the houses that sat empty for months, the people who vanished from HOA meetings without a word. Were they pushed out, or were they removed? I gripped the folder tighter. I wasn't going to back down, not now. Not after what I'd seen, but before I could say another word, I heard it. A knock at the front door of the office. 3 slow, heavy knocks, the same ones I had heard on my door days ago. The president's smile widened, and she whispered, "They're here for you." The sound of those 3 knocks froze me in place. Slow, heavy, deliberate. The exact same rhythm I had heard on my door. The sound that started all of this. I turned my head toward the front of the office. The president didn't flinch. In fact, her smile grew wider, like she had been waiting for this moment. "They're here for you," she whispered again. Her voice carried no fear, only satisfaction. I tightened my grip on the folder in my hand, the one filled with my life, my secrets. I wasn't about to let go. The knocks came again, this time louder. The walls seemed to shake with each hit. My pulse quickened. But my body stayed still. The president slowly walked toward the door. Her heels clicked against the floor, each step deliberate, echoing in the quiet office. She turned to me before she opened it, her eyes gleaming. "You could have just paid your fines," she said softly. Then she pulled the door open. 2 men stood outside, not in HOA uniforms this time, but in dark suits, faces blank, cold, unreadable. They weren't neighbors, they weren't community officers, they were something else entirely. The taller one spoke first. "Is he here?" His voice was flat, professional, like a man used to giving orders. The president pointed at me. "He's inside." I felt my chest tighten, for the first time. I wasn't sure if this was still about the HOA, These men didn't look like suburban bullies. They looked like professionals, government maybe, or something worse. They stepped inside. Closing the door behind them, the air grew heavier. Archer, the taller one, locked eyes with me. "You've seen too much," he said. I raised the folder. "I've seen enough to know you're not running an HOA. You're running surveillance." The shorter man tilted his head. "You think you're clever, but you don't know how deep this goes." The president folded her arms, standing behind them now. Her confidence returned. She didn't need to speak anymore. These men spoke for her. I stayed calm, because panic never helps, and I wasn't just a homeowner. I was still who I had always been, FBI. I slipped my badge out of my pocket, held it up for them to see. "You want to talk about deep? Let's talk about federal jurisdiction." For the first time, they hesitated. A flicker of uncertainty crossed their faces, but it was brief, gone in seconds. The taller one smirked. "You think your badge means something here? It doesn't. Not in this neighborhood. Not in this neighborhood." The words echoed inside me. Like this place was its own country, its own system, untouchable. The shorter one stepped closer, his eyes sharp, his voice low. "Leave now. Burn that folder. Forget what you saw. And maybe, you get to keep living here." I stared at him, then glanced at the president. She was smiling again, like this was all part of her script. I shook my head slowly. "No, you don't get to scare people into silence. Not me. Not anyone." The taller one's smirk faded. His jaw tightened. "You're making a mistake." I took a step forward. My whole life is about mistakes. The difference is, I don't run from them. The room went silent, the tension so thick it felt like breathing smoke. And then, my phone buzzed. I pulled it from my pocket. A single message on the screen. "We're outside." The men saw it. Their eyes widened just slightly. They knew what it meant, and so did I. "Back up." I slipped the phone back into my pocket, looked straight at the two men. "You think I came here alone?" The taller one's eyes darted to the window, curtain still drawn, street still quiet. But he knew, he could feel it. They weren't alone anymore. The shorter one growled under his breath. "This isn't over." They backed toward the door, not running, not panicked, but measured, like men who knew they had lost the first round of a long game. The president followed them out, her smile gone now, her face pale. She glanced at me one last time before leaving, her eyes full of hate, like this wasn't finished. And then, silence again. I stood there in the empty office, files still open, my folder clutched in my hand. The words "stay out" echoing in my mind. But it was too late for that. I was already in. I locked the office door behind me and slipped into the night. The neighborhood looked normal again, lawns trimmed, houses dark, sprinklers hissing quietly. But I knew now, normal was just the mask, back home. I spread the folder across my kitchen table, page after page of information, not just about me, but about everyone on this street. Bank records, job histories, family secrets, everything that could be used to control someone. And then, one file caught my eye. It wasn't a neighbor's. It wasn't even from this town. It was marked case file. Inside, photos of men in suits, meetings in other cities, connections to something bigger, something national. This wasn't just my HOA. This was a network, a system hidden in plain sight, and I had stumbled right into the middle of it. I leaned back in my chair, the weight of it pressing down on me. The fake cops were only the beginning. The president was only a pawn, and those two men in suits, they were just the messengers. The real question was, who was sending them? I stared at the files until the sun rose, my coffee cold again, my eyes heavy, but my mind sharp. I couldn't stop now, not when the truth was this close. I picked up my badge, ran my fingers across the letters, FBI. I had taken down drug rings, gangs, even cartels. But this was different. This was hiding under white fences and welcome mats. It was hiding in plain sight, and that's when I realized something that chilled me more than anything else. The HOA wasn't protecting the neighborhood. The neighborhood was protecting the HOA. Every rule, every fine, every threat. It wasn't about lawns or parking. It was about control. It was about keeping outsiders blind, keeping everyone inside quiet. I closed the folder slowly, my jaw set. I wasn't going to stay quiet. The sun rose slowly over the cul-de-sac, golden light spilling across perfect lawns, white fences, and mailboxes lined like soldiers, but I didn't see peace anymore. I saw a stage where every smile was a mask, and every rule was a chain. The files lay spread across my table, pages filled with secrets, pages filled with fear. I couldn't look away. One file caught me hardest, a woman down the street, Mrs. Carter. Sweet smile, always baking cookies for neighbors. Her file said something else. Bankruptcy notices, medical debt, personal photos she never knew were taken, every secret stacked against her, ready to be used if she stepped out of line. I flipped another. Mr. Lopez, military veteran, quiet man who rarely left his house. His file had pages marked confidential, notes about his service, things even he might not know were public. They had him cornered too, page after page, the same. Every neighbor reduced to data, every weakness recorded, every life cataloged like property. It hit me hard. This wasn't about rules. This wasn't about lawns or mailboxes. This was about leverage, control. The HOA wasn't protecting the neighborhood was feeding the HOA. I pushed the files aside and leaned back. My coffee was cold again, my chest heavy, but my mind sharp. I needed to know who was behind this. I picked up my phone, called a number only a few people knew. When the line clicked, I spoke low. "It's me. I need a trace on a name." I gave them the name of the HOA president. Minutes later, the reply came back. Not just a name, but a history. And when I read it, my hands tightened around the phone. She wasn't just a suburban volunteer. She wasn't just a bored nay. Bore running meetings in a clubhouse. She had ties, government contracts, shell companies, money moving through places it shouldn't. Her past was buried deep, but not deep enough for me. That's when I heard it. A soft thump outside my window. I froze, moved slowly to the blinds, and saw them. A black van, parked across the street, no logos. Tinted windows. Inside, I could see shadows moving, watching. They weren't even hiding anymore. They wanted me to know. I closed the blinds, exhaled slowly. If they wanted me to play their game, I'd play. But on my terms, that night. I walked the street again, calm, casual, like nothing had changed. Neighbors waved nervously. Some looked away completely. And then, I saw her. The president, standing at the edge of the cul-de-sac, clipboard in hand, smile back on her face, but it wasn't the same smile. This one was sharp, dangerous, like a knife hidden in a handshake. She waved me over. I didn't move at first, but then I did, because fear doesn't win wars. When I reached her, she spoke softly. "You're in over your head. This isn't your fight." I tilted my head. "You made it my fight the moment you sent fake cops to my door." Her eyes narrowed. "You don't understand. We keep order here, without us. This place would fall apart." I almost laughed. Order, that word again. But this wasn't order. This was tyranny wrapped in manicured lawns and HOA newsletters. I leaned closer. "You're not keeping order. You're keeping control, and I'm going to tear it down." Her smile faded, but she didn't look scared. She looked amused. "You really think you can stop us?" I didn't answer, because in that moment, I realized something. She wasn't afraid of losing. She was afraid of exposure. She wasn't protecting herself. She was protecting someone else. And then, the streetlights flickered one by one, until the whole cul-de-sac was dark. The president's smile returned. "You should go home now, Chiquiki." "Sheets," whispered, her voice calm, steady, like she knew what was coming. From the shadows, figures appeared, not neighbors, not board members, men in suits, just like the ones from the office, at least 6 of them. Stepping into the street, blocking the exits, my heart slowed, not sped up, because this was no longer a petty game. This was the real thing. I stood still, letting them surround me. The neighbors peeked from windows, phones in their hands, but no one came outside. Fear kept them locked in place. One of the men stepped forward, the same tall one from before, his voice cold. "You had your chance. You should have stayed quiet." I raised my badge, held it high so everyone could see. "Federal agent," I said loud enough for the whole street to hear. "You want to play this game in front of witnesses? Go ahead." The man smirked. The president crossed her arms. The street stayed silent. And then, headlights appeared, bright, sharp. Flooding the cul-de-sac, a convoy of black cars rolled in. Doors opened, and real agents stepped out. The suits froze, their confidence cracked, because they knew this wasn't their turf anymore. My backup had arrived. The neighbors gasped. Whispers spreading. The men in suits shifted nervously. The president's face fell pale, and I stepped forward. "You wanted order?" I said. "Now let's see what real order looks like." The real agents moved fast, cuffing the men in suits, pulling them toward the cars. The president shouted, protested, screamed about rights and bylaws. But no one listened anymore. The neighbors watched it all, phones recording, proof. The mask of suburbia was slipping, and for the first time, the HOA looked powerless. But even as the men were taken away, even as the president was pushed into a car, I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot, because if they had power here, they had power elsewhere. And taking down one board president wouldn't end it, it would only expose it. I looked around at my neighbors, their eyes wide, their mouths open, some relieved, some terrified. Because now they knew the truth too, and truth is a dangerous thing. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. I turned back toward my house, the night air heavy, my chest tight, because I knew what came next. This wasn't just my fight anymore. It was bigger, and it was only beginning. The night ended with flashing lights, real agents, real cars, real arrests. The cul-de-sac that once looked like paradise now looked like a crime scene. Neighbors stood outside in their pajamas, phones still raised, faces pale. For the first time, the HOA wasn't in control. For the first time, people saw them for what they really were. The president sat cuffed in the back of a car, her smile gone, her eyes burning holes through me. She didn't speak, but I could feel her words in the air. This isn't over. When the cars drove away, the street fell quiet. One by one, doors closed, curtains drawn. The perfect neighborhood tried to go back to sleep, but we all knew nothing would ever be the same. I walked back into my house, dropped the folder on my kitchen table, and sat in silence. I thought it was over, but I was wrong, so very wrong, because that night, I got a call, a voice I hadn't heard in years, deep, calm, familiar. "Agent, you've stepped into something bigger than you realize." I leaned forward, heart steady. "I know." The voice paused, then said quietly, "The HOA was just a cover, a piece of a larger network. We've been watching them for years, but we didn't expect them to move this fast." I clenched my fist. "Move how?" The voice lowered. "Data collection, surveillance, blackmail. And not just here. There are more neighborhoods, more presidents, all tied together." I looked down at the folder, the names, the notes, the classified stamp. It all made sense now. This wasn't about my cul-de-sac. It was about control across the country. "How deep does it go?" I asked. The line went silent for a moment. Then the voice replied, "Deep enough that even the Bureau doesn't have full access." I felt a chill crawl up my spine. If the Bureau didn't have access, who did? The voice spoke again. "You've lit a fire. Now you need to decide. Do you want to keep playing the homeowner? Or do you want to burn the whole thing down?" The line went dead. I sat there in the dark, the weight of it pressing down on me. This wasn't just an investigation anymore. This was war. The next morning, the neighborhood looked normal again. Children played in the yards. Sprinklers hissed across lawns. The mailman waved like nothing happened, but under the surface, fear lingered. Neighbors avoided eye contact. Some packed boxes into cars, and the HOA clubhouse sat empty, locked tight. I went for a walk. Mrs. Carter waved nervously, her eyes darting. Mr. Lopez nodded once, but said nothing. They all knew the files weren't just on me, they were on everyone, and trust was broken forever at the edge of the street. I saw something new, a for sale sign hammered into the ground. Another neighbor gone. Another family disappearing quietly. Were they leaving on their own or being pushed out? That question burned in my head all day. Later, I returned to the folder, flipping through pages again, and then I saw something I had missed before, a coded note scribbled in the margin of one file, 3 letters, CAN. At first, it meant nothing, but the more I stared, the more I knew it wasn't random. It was a name, or maybe an acronym. I searched the Bureau database, and there it was, Community Alliance Network, a program shut down years ago. Or at least that's what the records claimed. It was supposed to monitor suburban developments, track residents for security purposes. But the funding vanished, the project buried. And yet, here it was. Alive in my neighborhood, the HOA wasn't just abusing power. They were part of an experiment, a ghost program that never really died. My blood ran cold, because if this was true, then every HOA could be a branch, every neighborhood a node, every homeowner a file. I closed the laptop slowly. The house felt smaller, the air heavier. I wasn't just fighting a board president anymore. I was standing against an entire network. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every noise outside made me flinch, a car door slamming, a dog barking, footsteps on the pavement. Were they watching me still? Were they planning their next move? At 2 a.m., I heard it again. Knocks, but not on my door, on my neighbor's. I peeked through the blinds. 2 men in suits, different faces. Same cold expressions. They stood on Mrs. Carter's porch. She opened the door halfway. Shaking, they spoke quietly, handed her an envelope, then walked away. She closed the door fast. Her lights went out minutes later. I wanted to storm across the street. I wanted to tear that envelope from her hands, but I couldn't. Not yet. Because this wasn't about one neighbor. This was about all of us. The next day, the whispers began at the mailbox, at the grocery store, even at the park. People said the president would be back. People said the men in suits weren't gone. People said nothing had changed, only gone deeper underground. And maybe they were right, because later that afternoon, a new letter showed up in my own mailbox. No stamp, no address, just slid inside quietly. I opened it. Inside, one line written in bold, "We know who you really are." My stomach dropped, because this wasn't about the FBI anymore. This was personal. They knew my name, my past, my role. They weren't just watching. They were hunting. I folded the letter slowly, burned it in the sink, watched the flames eat it alive, but the message stayed, etched into my mind. This wasn't over. This was only the beginning. The letter burned fast in the sink, but the words didn't disappear. They stayed in my head, like a whisper I couldn't shut off. We know who you really are. For the first time, I felt something I rarely admitted, not fear, but exposure. Like every wall around me was made of glass, and they were standing on the outside, watching. I sat at my kitchen table with the file. As again, names, numbers, secrets. Every page proof of a network bigger than my neighborhood. The Community Alliance Network wasn't dead. It was alive. It was thriving. And I was standing right in the middle of it. By the third night, I couldn't sit still anymore. The quiet of the suburb was too loud, the sprinklers hissing, the dogs barking, the sound of tires on smooth pavement. Every noise felt staged. Every smile I saw in daylight felt rehearsed. I had to move. I had to hit back. So I drove. Not to the bureau, not to a safe house, but straight to the place I swore I'd never step again, the HOA clubhouse. It was empty on the outside, locked doors, dark windows. But I knew better. The real meetings didn't happen during the day. They happened at night, when the streets slept, when the neighbors dreamed. That's when the decisions were made. I parked a block away, walked the rest of the distance, every step slow, deliberate, quiet. When I reached the back door, it was already unlocked. They wanted me inside. They were expecting me. I slipped in anyway. The clubhouse smelled of wood polish and paper, chairs stacked neatly against the wall, a long table sat in the middle, but this time, it wasn't covered in neighborhood minutes or lawn violation slips. It was covered in maps of suburbs across the country, pins stuck into cul-de-sacs, notes scribbled in the margins, circles around certain homes, lists of names beneath them. I stepped closer. My chest tightened. This wasn't just my HOA. This was dozens, hundreds maybe. And then I heard it, A slow clap behind me. The president stepped from the shadows. No clipboard this time, just a calm smile. You finally found it. I didn't speak. I let her talk. You think this is corruption. You think this is abuse. But it's survival. The suburbs are fragile. People need order, and order needs power. I looked at her. Power doesn't come from fear. She tilted her head. Fear keeps people in line. Fear keeps people safe. I shook my head slowly. No, fear keeps people small, and you've made everyone here smaller than they should be. Her smile faded. Her eyes hardened. You could have joined us. With your training, your position, you could have been valuable. I raised my badge. I already chose my side. That's when the doors opened. Men in suits poured in. Not 2, not 3, at least a dozen. They surrounded the table, the maps, the president, and me. The air grew heavy. I tightened my fists because I knew this wasn't about talking anymore. This was about ending it. The president raised her hand, her voice calm. Last chance, walk away. And this stays between us. Stay. And you disappear. I stepped forward, my voice steady. You should have sent real cops the first time, because now, you're mine. The suits moved fast, but not fast enough. The front doors burst open. Real agents stormed in. My backup. The bureau had been watching too. And this time, they didn't wait. The room erupted. Shouts. Orders. Cuffs snapping shut. The men in suits fought back, but the fight didn't last long. One by one, they went down. The president tried to run, slipped toward the back door, but I caught her, dragged her back to the table, her face twisted with rage. You think you've won? She hissed. You haven't even scratched the surface. I leaned close. Then let's see how deep it goes. The agents took her away, the maps, the files, the names, all packed up as evidence, the clubhouse stripped bare, the network exposed. When the night was over, the street was quiet again, too quiet. Neighbors peeked out from behind curtains, their eyes full of questions, but none of them opened their doors. None of them asked what happened, because maybe they didn't want the answer. I walked home alone. The cul-de-sac looked the same, perfect lawns, white fences, calm streets. But I knew better now. I knew the truth. And truth is heavier than any chain. I sat at my table again, the house silent, the files gone, but my mind racing, because the president was right about one thing. His wasn't the end. The Community Alliance Network was bigger than one board, bigger than one neighborhood, bigger than me. We had cracked one branch, but the tree still stood. And I couldn't stop thinking, how many other neighborhoods were living the same lie? How many other presidents were smiling over clipboards? How many other families were trapped under rules they didn't understand? I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes. The fight wasn't over. It was just starting. And maybe I wasn't just a homeowner anymore. Maybe I was the only one who could burn it all down. But I'll ask you this. If you discovered your neighborhood was just one piece of a national machine built on fear and control, would you risk everything to tear it apart? Or would you look the other way and hope they never chose your door?